Casey Jr. visited Tillie after he finished with the logs. Can you tell me your secret of when you moved here? Okay. I have this diary I kept for years. That's how it goes.
I never thought that hyenas are essential. They're crude and unspeakably plain, but maybe they've a glimmer of potential if allied to my vision and brain. I know that your powers of retention are as wet as a warthog's backside. But thick as you are, pay attention. My words are a matter of pride. It's clear from your vacant expression, the lights are not on upstairs, but we are talking kings and succession. Even you can't be caught unawares. So prepare for a chance of a lifetime, prepared for the greatest sensational news. A shiny new era is tiptoeing nearer. Just listen to teacher. I know it sounds sordid, but you'll be rewarded when at last I am given my dues, and injustice deliciously squared. Be prepared. It's great that they'll soon be connected with a king that is all time adored. Of course there's some duties that you can allow on board. The future is littered with prizes, and I am the main addressee. The point that I must emphasize is, you will get a sniff about me. So prepare for a coup of the century, prepared for a murky scam from me. Meticulously planning, tenacity spanning, decades of denial is simply why I'll be a king undisputed, respected, saluted, and seen for the wonder I am. Yes, my teeth and ambitions are bad. Be prepared.
Tillie, the Little Blue Engine, and the Forest of Secrets, by Mr. Christopher James Rush. Chapter 1. The Little Blue Engine Who Lived and Escaped. Mr. and Mrs. Gordon of number 9 Ankle Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. They were the last people you'd expect to be involved in anything odd, because they didn't hold much of what ways can be like. Mr. Gordon was the director of the railway in the middle of the woods on the other side of the mysterious mountain, but was into picking on anything that lives in it. Mrs. Gordon was secretary of the railway, and she too was picky. And they had 2 sons, but were lost in jail. The last time they saw them, they left for school and hadn't come back when they tied it earlier. The Gordons had almost everything they wanted, but they also had a secret, and their greatest fear was that someone would discover it. They didn't think they could bear it if anyone found out about a little girl named Tillie. Tillie Gordon was Mrs. Gordon's daughter, but they haven't met for several years. After when she was about 10, she grew fond of trains, but her parents didn't want her to drive them. But all the same, when Tillie learned about trains, she just ignores their sayings. She knew they never earned sense, so she went to live with her uncle, who knew about trains by leaving the house in secret. Mr. and Mrs. Gordon suddenly realized their daughter was not living with them anymore, and they went to her uncle's house to ask if they could have her back, but he refused because his niece told him their personality was no good to her, and she and them had to have their separate ways. The Gordons were never happy for years, and nobody ever met them, and they shuddered to think what the world would say if they would find the story of their life. They knew that Tillie had a job being an engine driver and has a steam engine to work with, but they never knew the name of him or her. This railway was another good reason why it was owned from the Gordon family, because they didn't want anyone to buy it. But one day, if they die of feeling life broke, someone responsible as them will look after the railway and make sure it doesn't close. Our story starts when the Gordons were visiting other workplaces. None of them noticed a black face of something peep through the window. Mr. Gordon picked up his bag, said goodbye to his wife, went to his car and drove out of number 9's drive. It was out of nowhere that he noticed the first sign of something peculiar. A pony reading a map. For a second, Mr. Gordon didn't realize what he had seen. Then he jerked his head around to look again. There was a black pony standing about the property. But there wasn't a map in sight. What could he have been thinking of? It must have been a trick of the light. Mr. Gordon blinked and stared at the pony. It stared back. As Mr. Gordon drove away, he looked in his mirror. It was now reading the sign that said Ankle Drive. No, looking at the sign, ponies couldn't read maps or signs. Mr. Gordon gave himself a little shake and put the pony out of his mind. That must be the owner of the place. As he drove towards town, he thought of nothing except about what he would say of where he works. But on the edge of town, it was driven away by something else. As he parked the car in the usual car park, he couldn't help noticing that there seemed to be some engines about. Engines on steam. Mr. Gordon wondered where all the engines were from, and where they moved to, or were they just scrap engines. He was surprised to see that they didn't look retired at all, and there was a whisper from them. He didn't understand what they were saying, as he just needed to get to his meeting place. His mind back on what he was to say about his workplace. Mr. Gordon always sat in his office at the 100th floor with his back to the open window. If he hadn't, he might have found it harder to concentrate on his saying that morning. He didn't see a train spying on him. Though people in theirs did, they wondered if a costume entertainment was coming to town. The engine who was spying on Mr. Gordon muttered something quietly, so his or her prey wouldn't listen, then disappeared out of the building. Hey? Mr. Gordon looked up in time to see nothing when he heard some chuffing. He made several important telephone calls, shouting about engines that should be in museums and others that should be in the railways working, not wandering off. He was in a very good mood until lunchtime, when he thought he'd stretch his legs and buy himself a cake from the baker's opposite. He'd forgotten about the engines on steam until he passed two others. He eyed them angrily as he passed. He didn't know why, but the sight of them made him feel uneasy. They were whispering too, and he couldn't see a person driving them. Yes. It was on his way back to the council that he caught a few words of what they were saying. The Gordon's niece has died after she named her engine she brought Tillie. Mr. Gordon stopped dead when he heard about his daughter. Thinking about what he heard, he dashed back to the council. Went to his office about to take the phone so he could dial his home number, when he changed his mind. He stopped his hand about to take the phone and put his head into some thinking. No, he was being stupid. An engine named after their daughter seems odd. He was sure there are lots of girls that may be named Tillie. Come to think of it, he wasn't sure if the new engine he and his wife had bought was named Tillie. He'd never met the engine, but forgot to name her. It might have been Silly or Billy. There was no point in worrying Mrs. Gordon. She always gets upset at any mention of her daughter. He didn't blame her, and he didn't want to mention the name of his daughter either. He remembered when she used to be with them. She used to go to school only for 1 year. She was disobedient, and they never knew she learned sense, because she always sneaks off and back again when they were away, only to pack her stuff when living with her uncle. He had a thought that struck him. When she was born, he and his wife didn't know that his brother took her to live with. They also didn't know that she had her own ways of living and working without a senseless bunch. They're all the same, these engines on steam. He found it a lot harder to concentrate on what he was to say in his meeting that afternoon. He decided to head for home because his mind was on his daughter. They never saw her after she was born. As he arrived home, the first thing he saw that morning, and it didn't improve his mood, was the black pony. It was now standing beside the house. He was sure it was the same one. "Shoo!" he said loudly. The black pony didn't move. It gave him a stern look, suddenly saying, "Your daughter was right to be taken from your brother after she was born." Mr. Gordon was taken aback. Was the pony meant to talk? He wondered. Trying to pull himself together, he went in the house. Mrs. Gordon, when he met her in the kitchen, told him there was no news about their daughter, as she always said. Mr. Gordon tried not to mention about what he had. He went to the TV room in time to catch the news. And finally, viewers everywhere have reported an engine named Tillie has helped a party train getting over the mysterious mountain. She came back pleased with doing what's right, but today, when the tower has found out about what she did, he for no reason grounded her till 25 14. She snapped at the tower, giving him some warning of pulling him down after saying she had to take the party train. If it didn't get to the boy, he would have nothing, so the tower let her do a grown-up thing. Anyway, to what I'm about to say, she was named after the Gordon's daughter that died after years of driving her. If they're watching this, they best be careful. Tillie the little blue engine can be tricky, for many people have heard her say she wishes to live someplace else. Mr. Gordon sat frozen in his chair. Tillie Gordon, who died with poor life, engines on steam, and a whisper about Tillie living with her uncle. Mrs. Gordon came into the living room. It was no good. He'd have to say something to her. He cleared his throat and said, Molly, dear, you haven't heard from our daughter lately, have you?" As he had expected, Mrs. Gordon looked shocked and angry. After all, they were wanting it back badly. "No," she said sharply. "Why?" "Well, we're unlucky she's dead after she named her engine. We were too late to stop her to buy because we were to run the railway. The engine who left the railway to take the party train. Her name is, Tillie. That engine under the same name knows about our daughter's disappearance. We'll have to ground her. Look, our railway is poor and she might have to run it. All the engines have gone to a new home. It's almost like they got a mind of their own, yes. She might know where they've gone." They went to bed. While Mrs. Gordon was in the bathroom, Mr. Gordon crept to the bedroom window and peered down into the railway yard. The black pony was still there. It was staring down the line as though it was waiting for something. Could all this be some sort of plot, engines moving to somewhere? Well, he had a good feeling that the railway can get alive again. But what he didn't know was that Tillie, the little blue engine, was to refuse working for them. Mr. Gordon might have been sleeping fine, but the pony outside was showing no sign of sleepiness. It was still as a statue, its eyes fixed unblinkingly on the far spot of the railway. A light appeared out of the gloom. Its eyes pricked up when it saw what was arriving. A tram engine appeared out of the gloom so suddenly that you'd thought he just came out of a thick growth of bushes. Nothing like this tram engine had ever been seen in this unknown railway. He was made of wood, has car catchers and side plates with a bell and a number 7 on his side. This engine's name was Toby the tram engine. Toby seemed to know this railway because he had been on holidays the day before, and as usual also seemed to realize he arrived in it where everything from his name to his wheels was unwelcome. The lights were off, and he saw the black pony. He did realize, too, he was being watched. He seemed to know the pony, and muttered, "I might have known." He came up to it. "Fancy meeting you here, Nightmare Moon." "Hello, Toby. How did you know it was me?" Nightmare Moon asked. "My dear pony, I've never seen a pony stand stiffly for so long." "You'd be stiff if you haven't moved about all day," said Nightmare Moon. "All day, when you were spying on people with no sense. Well, it must be hard to stay in the shadows." Nightmare Moon sniffed angrily. "Oh, yes. Everyone's not noticing," she said impatiently. "You'd think these engines who left to move to Tasman Sodor should be more careful. But no." Even when they were trying to not let anyone notice, the humans have noticed something's going on. It was on the news." She jerked her head back at the Gordon's dark living room window. "I heard it. Tillie working alone before moving. Well, they're not stupid. They're bound to notice something. She was moving over the mountain." "You can't blame the engines," said Toby. "They have watched a tape back in 1991. "I know that," said Nightmare Moon irritably. "But that's no reason for them to whisper about the rumors. A fine thing it would be if on the very day B.L. seems to have disappeared, she died when the Gordon's daughter was putting Tillie to bed at the end of the day when the tower was about." "My dear pony, you don't mean B.L. means in full name Bellatrix Lestrange you haven't met for years? Yes, something like that. But before she even met me, she was up to something, and something just stopped her. What has got her dead? It seemed that Nightmare Moon had reached the point she was wanting to discuss the real reason she had been waiting here all day. What the engines were saying, she pressed on, is that last afternoon Bellatrix turned up in the railway of Tillie's. The rumour is that the Gordon's daughter, I said to her father, is dead. But that's not all, she went on. They're saying she tried to kill the engine, but she couldn't. She couldn't kill her. When I met Tillie, she told me Bellatrix died after she killed a driver. It serves her right for doing it, said Toby. Anyway, what are you here for? I've come to give Tillie to this railway. When I met her on her way to her new home. Nightmare Moon glared at Toby. Toby, you don't mean... You don't really mean... Tillie stay here? Silly puppet. She tried to escape this railway with these runts. I'm not sure if that's a very good idea. These people I heard were wanting to have her run the railway. I wouldn't be surprised if today was Tillie the little blue engine day in future. There will be books written about her. They won't be because I've told her to follow my instructions. Here she comes now. Another headlamp came up. Tillie arrived to meet her friends. Hey, you two. Am I to stay here? Yes, but Nightmare Moon has told me that you must leave at 5 a.m. It's the only way that you can keep in the shadows. The Gordons will try to question you if you know about their daughter. Of course I know her, but I haven't asked her about her time since she was killed from the witch. That's Bellatrix. Anyway, you best rest here and wait till 5 a.m. comes. Right. Let's get this over with. The plan of getting me out of America to Tasmania. Can you back out, Toby? I need to get in there. All right. Tillie parked herself in the shed. Toby A nightmare moon said goodbye and good luck to her after saying this first. To Tillie, the little blue engine who lived and escaped. Chapter 2. Memorial moments before leaving. 5 a.m. came, and Tillie was ready to leave. She was to follow the railway line to where Toby told her to go. She had some thoughts about her past life when she was grounded till 2014. She had to move to a new home. Tillie looked about the railway. It seemed a rundown, and it was next to Ankle Drive. The Gordons she didn't want to meet were not really the right people to run it. Nightmare Moon told her that her life would be a misery if they told her to run the railway. A motto from anyone with a poor mind wouldn't be told to things right. There was a newspaper she brought. She had a read, and to her shock found a story of Tillie Gordon. Tillie Gordon has been living with her uncle Ted Gordon for years and was never shown at all. We believe that she is a secret girl that has no record. Her uncle hid them from public after she was seen in school. There was no record there. The police are finding the engine with the same name, thinking she might know about what she witnessed. Tillie finished the story, but was staring blankly at the photo of the baby daughter of the Gordons. The story was right. It had no birth date, and there was a small line that said, Ted Gordon only wants to tell his story about his niece when the world has new people, or perhaps not. She remembered the days when her driver told her the secret of her tale and has left the diary in the cab. Nobody ever knew she had it. Come to think of it, she suddenly realized she was in danger. She decided to read it. Here it is. My name is Tillie Gordon. I've been taken in from my uncle, and my parents didn't know I was taken in from someone else after I was born. My history is to be given to the magic world instead of the muggle world. Now that I'm retiring, Tillie, I had to find a time to die after years of secret life. I lived on with no trouble until after I put Tillie to bed. She finished the book and put it away. She finished the book and put it back in the cab box, but had a sinking, upset feeling about the true story of the driver. She thought she knew her quite well, but was forced to recognize that she had barely known her at all. What a way to be alone without someone to talk to. After thinking, she began to sneak away, but failed when the sun was coming up, and to her shock, the Gordons came up to her. "You must be Tillie," said Mr. Gordon. "You're to run this railway till we get a new engine to help you. Why are you so glum?" "I can't tell you, sir. It's a bit painful, but you two wouldn't care. You're just a senseless pair." As she had expected, Mr. Gordon said, rather angrily, "Then stay in the shed if you're refusing to work for us." They left after Mrs. Gordon said to Tillie, "We'll phone the scrapyards to take you in." Tillie saw a chance to make her move. She sneaked towards a gate which wasn't mended. "I like to see them push their luck on me," she muttered. "Time for the taste of freedom." As she left to head to where she wants to live, Mrs. Gordon seemed angry when she had a phone call. "Bad news, Bimley," she said. "The scrapyard can't give us another engine. They're out of engine stock. Now what?" "Well, I don't know what we can do with that new engine. It's almost as if she's on our daughter's side. There must be something that can take her in. We could phone Sally." "Don't be silly. She hates engines." "What about what's her name?" "Lily. She's on holiday in England at—" She paused all of a sudden. "Huh? Do you think she's heading to where we don't know?" I think she's... Oh no! The gate! We didn't fix it, so we could lock her in." They stared at the gate where Tillie had gone. "We'd better get the car. We'll have to stop her and force her back,"